They changed the locks, emptied the house, and sold it at an HOA auction that never should have existed. By sunset, every family photo, every piece of furniture, and every memory had been thrown into a dumpster. The HOA president stood on the front lawn with a smug smile, telling everyone, "That's what happens when you ignore the rules." What she didn't know, hidden inside a dusty folder, signed 23 years earlier, was one forgotten signature that would destroy everything she had built. And before the week was over, federal investigators would be knocking on her door. Most people in Maple Ridge Estates, a quiet neighborhood outside Nashville, believed the HOA existed to protect property values. Nobody imagined it would become a weapon, especially not Caleb Turner. Caleb was 46 years old, a widowed electrician who had spent 20 years restoring the small brick house he had inherited from his father. Every weekend meant fresh paint, repaired fences, flowers in the yard, and helping neighbors without asking for anything in return. Everyone knew Caleb. Everyone trusted him. Everyone, except Vanessa Brooks. Vanessa had become HOA president only 8 months earlier. She loved power more than the neighborhood. Every week brought new rules. Mailboxes had to be identical. Garages couldn't stay open longer than 15 minutes. Holiday decorations had to disappear exactly 24 hours after the holiday. Neighbors started receiving hundreds of dollars in fines for tiny violations. Most families paid. Some complained. Nobody challenged Vanessa. Until Caleb. One Tuesday morning, he opened his mailbox and found another violation notice. Fine, $850. Reason? Grass color inconsistent with community appearance. Caleb laughed. He honestly thought it was a joke. He drove straight to the HOA office carrying pictures of his perfectly maintained lawn. Vanessa barely looked at them. "If you don't like the rules," she said calmly, "you can always move." "I own my home," Caleb answered. She smiled. "We'll see." Those 2 words stayed in his mind. Weeks passed. More notices arrived. Mailbox violation. Fence violation. Driveway stain. Window curtain color. Noise complaint. Every fine seemed more ridiculous than the last. Within 3 months, the HOA claimed Caleb owed over $18,000. His attorney immediately disputed every charge. But strangely, the HOA stopped responding. Instead, something far worse was happening behind the scenes. Vanessa had secretly hired a small legal firm that specialized in HOA foreclosures. She told board members Caleb had abandoned the property. She claimed certified letters had been ignored. She even presented documents saying foreclosure procedures had already begun. Most board members never questioned her. They simply trusted their president. Meanwhile, Caleb knew nothing. He had accepted a 6-week emergency electrical contract in Kentucky after a tornado damaged several communities. His mail was being forwarded, or at least, it was supposed to be. Back in Tennessee, Vanessa moved quickly. She scheduled an HOA auction on a rainy Thursday morning. Only 6 people attended. 2 investors, 3 HOA board members, and Vanessa herself. The opening bid? $5,000. For a home worth nearly $640,000. The auction lasted less than 4 minutes. Nobody in the neighborhood knew it had happened. The winning bidder happened to be a company owned by Vanessa's brother-in-law. Everything looked legal, at least on paper. 3 days later, Caleb drove home. He turned onto Maple Ridge Drive with a smile. The first thing he noticed was a moving truck in his driveway. The second, strangers carrying his furniture outside. He slammed on the brakes. "What are you doing?" A man holding paperwork looked confused. "We bought the house." Caleb laughed. "No, you didn't." The man handed him several documents. HOA foreclosure, auction records, transfer paperwork. Caleb stared silently. "This is impossible." Just then, Vanessa walked across the street wearing designer sunglasses. She folded her arms. "I warned you. You stole my house." "No," she replied. "You lost it." Neighbors watched from behind curtains. Nobody spoke. Caleb tried opening his front door. The key no longer worked. The locks had already been changed. Inside the dumpster sat family photo albums. His father's military medals. His late wife's handmade quilt. Even Christmas ornaments his daughter had made before she passed away. Everything. Thrown away like garbage. Caleb climbed into the dumpster without saying a word. He carefully picked up a cracked wooden photo frame. Tears filled his eyes. Across the street, Vanessa laughed with another board member. Several neighbors looked uncomfortable. None of them expected things to go this far. An elderly neighbor named Harold Simmons quietly walked over. "I recorded everything," Harold whispered. Caleb looked confused. "What? The movers? Vanessa? The auction company? Everything?" Harold handed him a small flash drive. "I had a feeling something wasn't right." For the first time all day, Caleb smiled. Not because he believed everything would be okay, but because someone had finally stood beside him. That evening, Caleb rented a tiny motel room. He spread every document across the bed. Auction papers, HOA notices, property records, bank statements. Something felt wrong, very wrong. The foreclosure documents listed an HOA covenant amendment dated 2003. Caleb frowned. His father had personally served on the original neighborhood committee. He remembered countless conversations about those documents. Something didn't match. Around midnight, he opened an old storage box he always kept in his truck. Inside were faded folders belonging to his father. Tax records, insurance papers, original neighborhood maps. Then, one thick envelope marked, "Original HOA agreement, never discard." His hands froze. He slowly opened it. Inside lay dozens of original signatures from homeowners who founded Maple Ridge Estates over 2 decades earlier. At the bottom, one page immediately caught his attention. It wasn't the agreement. It wasn't the bylaws. It was a handwritten amendment signed by every original property owner, including Caleb's father. One sentence was underlined. "No future HOA board shall possess the authority to initiate foreclosure or conduct the sale of privately owned homes under any circumstance unless approved by unanimous written consent of every original founding property owner or their legal successors." Caleb read it again and again. His breathing changed. He looked back at Vanessa's foreclosure paperwork. The amendment was missing, completely missing. Someone hadn't just made a mistake. Someone had erased the only document that made the entire auction illegal. Caleb slowly reached for his phone. The first call he made wasn't to the police. It wasn't to the sheriff. It wasn't even to his attorney. It was to the one person who had helped write the neighborhood's original legal documents 23 years earlier. The call connected. An elderly voice answered. "Hello." Caleb took a deep breath. "I think someone just stole my house. And I think I finally found the proof." Caleb's hands were shaking as he held the faded amendment. On the other end of the phone was Gordon Hayes, an 81-year-old retired real estate attorney who had helped draft the original Maple Ridge Estates documents more than 2 decades earlier. "Read the last paragraph to me," Gordon said. Caleb read every word. There was a long silence. Then Gordon quietly said, "Caleb, if that document is authentic, your house was never legally allowed to be sold." Those words changed everything. By sunrise, Gordon was sitting across from Caleb in the motel lobby. He adjusted his glasses and carefully examined the original paperwork. The paper was aged. The signatures matched. The county recording stamps were genuine. Finally, Gordon looked up. This amendment wasn't forgotten. It was removed. Caleb frowned. Removed? Someone intentionally left it out of every document used for the foreclosure. That wasn't negligence. It was fraud. Within hours, Gordon contacted a respected property litigation attorney, Lauren Whitfield. She didn't make promises. She simply studied the documents for nearly 40 minutes. Then she looked directly at Caleb. "I've handled HOA abuse cases for 15 years. I've never seen anything this bold." She immediately filed an emergency motion to stop any resale or transfer of the property. At the same time, she requested every document connected to the HOA foreclosure. When the records arrived, something unbelievable appeared. Several signatures on the foreclosure paperwork looked identical. Too identical. The spacing, the pressure, even the slant of the letters matched perfectly. Lauren smiled. Someone copied these. A forensic document examiner confirmed it 2 days later. Multiple homeowner signatures had been forged. The investigation suddenly became much bigger than one stolen house. Meanwhile, Vanessa Brooks continued acting as if nothing had happened. She proudly told neighbors the foreclosure proved that no one was above the HOA. She even posted on the community website that strict enforcement protected property values. But people had started asking questions. Why had the auction happened with almost no notice? Why was Vanessa's brother-in-law's company the winning bidder? Why had furniture already been removed before Caleb even returned home? The whispers spread through Maple Ridge Estates. For the first time, Vanessa looked nervous. Then Harold Simmons stepped forward. The retired Army veteran handed investigators every video he had recorded from his porch security cameras. The footage showed movers arriving before the auction paperwork had even been finalized. Another clip showed Vanessa giving instructions while laughing with the auction crew. One sentence was captured clearly. "Don't worry. By tomorrow, this place won't belong to him anymore." That single recording became devastating evidence. County investigators soon uncovered financial records. Payments from the buyer's company had quietly been transferred into an account connected to Vanessa's husband. Then another surprise emerged. This wasn't the first house. Investigators found 2 previous foreclosures with nearly identical paperwork. Different homeowners, different excuses, the same law firm, the same buyer, the same HOA president. It wasn't an isolated mistake. It was a pattern. 3 weeks later, federal investigators joined the case because forged legal documents and interstate financial transfers had been discovered. Early one Friday morning, black SUVs pulled into Maple Ridge Estates. Neighbors peeked through curtains. Vanessa opened her front door with a confident smile. She thought someone had come to interview her. Instead, an investigator handed her a federal search warrant. Her smile disappeared. Boxes of financial records, computers, phones, hard drives. Everything left the house. By afternoon, news helicopters were circling overhead. The quiet neighborhood had become national news. Months later, the courtroom was completely full. Neighbors filled every seat. Reporters lined the walls. Vanessa sat beside her attorneys, looking nothing like the confident HOA president everyone remembered. Lauren Whitfield calmly presented the original amendment signed by every founding homeowner. Then she displayed the version used during the foreclosure. One page was missing, the most important page. Next came the forensic expert. He explained how signatures had been copied, how dates had been altered, how official records had been manipulated. Then Harold's security footage played on the courtroom screen. The room became silent. Vanessa could be heard saying, "By tomorrow, this place won't belong to him anymore." Her own words echoed through the courtroom. Finally, Gordon Hayes took the stand. Holding the original neighborhood records, he testified that the amendment had always been part of the governing documents. It had never been revoked. It had never been replaced. It had simply disappeared from the paperwork Vanessa submitted. The judge slowly removed his glasses. He looked directly at Vanessa. "This court finds the foreclosure, auction, and property transfer legally void from the beginning. The defendant never possessed the authority to sell this home." Gasps filled the courtroom. The judge continued. This was not merely an abuse of HOA authority. This was an organized fraud. Within minutes, deputies approached Vanessa. She stood slowly as handcuffs were placed on her wrists. The woman who once smiled while Caleb lost everything walked out of the courtroom in silence. A week later, Caleb unlocked the front door of his home again. This time, legally. Neighbors gathered outside and applauded as he walked back inside. Many of them apologized for staying silent. Caleb didn't hold a grudge. He simply smiled. "We all make mistakes. But silence helps the wrong people." The county ordered every possession that had been recovered returned to Caleb. Harold even helped restore the old family photographs that had been thrown into the dumpster. Caleb carefully placed his father's military medals back above the fireplace, exactly where they had always belonged. The HOA board resigned almost entirely. A new board was elected with strict transparency rules. Every meeting became public. Every financial record became available to homeowners. No president would ever again have unchecked power. As for Vanessa, she lost far more than her position. She faced criminal convictions related to fraud, forgery, and conspiracy, along with civil lawsuits from multiple homeowners. The company owned by her brother-in-law dissolved. The fake auction profits disappeared into restitution payments. Everything built on deception eventually collapsed. Months later, a local reporter asked Caleb one final question. "When they threw your memories into that dumpster, what kept you going?" Caleb looked at his restored home before answering. "They thought they were stealing a house. They forgot a house is just bricks. The truth is what brings you home." And in the end, it wasn't money. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even the courtroom victory. It was one forgotten signature that reminded an entire neighborhood that the law is stronger than greed, and that no one, not even the most powerful HOA president, is above it.